Adam, you write in your book about fake news and how the way that it has proliferated and become such a problem in recent times can be understood to a certain extent through looking at our evolutionary history. You write that functioning human communities and societies depend on a level of trust between members, but of course there's a very fine line between trust and gullibility. So can you explain how our evolutionary past is fueling the enormous problem in misinformation that we see in modern society?
Yeah, it's certainly a big topic at the moment, isn't it? I'm looking at my Twitter feed now, and half the messages seem to have some sort of warning on it at the moment. But fake news is an interesting one to look for echoes of our evolutionary past. You know, some of the things I talk about in the book are quite clearly biological, and we can sort of track genetic backgrounds and all sorts of other things. This is perhaps a little bit more of a sort of extending that thesis, but I think there are some echoes in our evolutionary past when we look at the importance of as you mentioned, trust. We're a social organism. We do very well in groups. Actually, right now, of course, being in groups is proving to be our Achilles heel. And it's interesting that globally, one of the ways we're tackling COVID is to break up social groups. You know, so that's an interesting kind of sort of part of that. But our evolutionary past has set up mental heuristics, so mental ways of thinking about things, our cognition, the way that we go about doing things that enable us to build up these trusting relationships with people around us. And that enables us to function better in groups and as individuals. And some of the things that we can investigate, so using some sort of techniques from psychology and things, are things like confirmation bias, for example. We're much more likely to believe things that we already believe. And we're also much more likely to believe good things of those around us that we've built up a trust for. So it's a sort of positive reinforcement. The people around us, we're more likely to believe good things of, and the out group, the others, we're more likely to believe bad things of. And if we link this into things like the halo effect, for example, where attractive people, people who are confident, tend to be have other values assigned to them. So they tend to have values of trustworthiness, for example, or success assigned to them, even when they haven't actually earned that those attributes. And when we start piling all these in to things like mainstream news, where we have a sort of recent cultural history of believing mainstream news. You know, when I was growing up, when I was younger, you would sit down and watch the news. It was a daily event. And it had all the accoutrements of modern news, and people were telling you things, and everyone believed what was being said. Now, of course, we've got news coming out of our ears. We have too much news, and too much commentary dressed up as news. But all of those things have this kind of halo effect around them, whereby we have a tendency to believe them. And we can link those things into our evolutionary past. So the halo effect, for example, where we are more likely to assign positive attributes to people who are attractive, for instance, may well be linked to some of the things of some of the features of sexual selection. So if you look in other organisms, certainly organisms that are more symmetrical tend to be, or what we would describe as perhaps more attractive, tend to be more favored when females are choosing males, for example. Males that are more dominant and more confident in other species tend to get more mates, and so on. So when we look at evolutionary traits in other organisms, we can quite clearly see these patterns. And it's quite interesting then to reflect within our own sort of biology whether or not we can see those things. So I think there is this evolutionary sort of echo in the way that we deal with other people, the way that we deal with our own groups, the way that we assign values. We have these quick rules of thumb, these quick heuristics. This person is this. We don't have time to interrogate them for the next 3 hours to find out if they're all these other things. We make certain assumptions, and those assumptions generally work out. Of course, what we have now, I mean, the big issue with fake news is not so much our evolutionary past, but another echo of our evolution, I suppose, is the fact that we have developed such a phenomenal way of spreading it around. You know, our ability to come up with novel ideas and to develop technology has led to the internet, and that is the ideal vehicle for spreading fake news and for spreading information that's not true, because fake news isn't a new thing. You can see it through antiquity, you know, all the way back to sort of Mark Antony and before, and you can see lots of things going on in the 1700s, for example, where false information is being put around. So it's not a new thing, but our ability to spread it is, and that's one of the features actually of quite a few of the chapters of the book. The modern world is this very potent environment, whether it's drugs, whether it's the food that's available to us, or in this case, whether it's information. And our brains are not really wired for that. We can stop ourselves believing in it, we have to make positive efforts to do that. I think if we don't, it's very tempting to just slip into sort of confirmation bias and halo effects and allow ourselves to become fed by information that isn't true.
Thank you.